Good morning, saints. It's a delight to be here. It's a gift to see that complicated gospel unpacked for children. I could just end here and say that was the complete sermon, but you know me, I'm a pastor, so I have a lot more to say. Anybody notice the yellows this year? They seem exceptionally bright to me. Could just be that I'm getting older. Could be that I'm paying more attention, more carefully. A week ago today, I was at the Oregon coast waiting for 110 pastors and deacons to emerge. We gather once a year, and often in Newport, to gather for the bishop's convocation, to study, to sing, to pray, to listen to one another, to lean in. And as I was awaiting people to come on a Sunday afternoon, I looked out at the steely gray skies and smelled the salt air and that sand, the way it carries generations of smells. And I heard seagulls and the surf, and I was finally able to release some of my worries and really feel gratitude. We started on Monday with worship, and our worship leader asked us to put our hands on our hearts and listen to the rhythm. So I'm going to ask you, put your hands on your hearts, and it's not as though we've been doing laps in the field, so you may not be able to feel your heart, but see if you can feel its rhythm, its ancient echoes of the surf. And the way that as a muscle, it carries the blood and oxygen to all the cells in your body. That heart, if you would. And know that if you're a child, your heart is about as big as your fist. If you're an adult, go like this. Your heart is about as big as two fists, right there in the center, holding you and serving you. Your heart, depending on when you woke up, has already been beating about 25,000 times just today. 35 million times in the past year. We have so much to be thankful for that we never think about. One of the best assignments I ever received as an undergrad was write a thank you note to your heart, and then another one to your feet, and another one to your eyes. And it can sound a little corny, a little 70s, but it's one of the few assignments I remember, right? It made an impact. And it's so easy to get so caught up in the trappings and the powers and the principalities of the day and not pay attention to the gifts around us. Every single thing in that opening litany fits with the gospel and what I want to say to all of you. Because it's what I hear Scripture being saturated with. So I was given the assignment by James Bash, that guy right there, to talk about giving. And so you can tell that this sermon is going to be about paying attention. It's going to be about finding gratitude. And it's going to be about sharing and living boldly. 3-point sermon. Get ready. Buckle up. Very Lutheran. 140 million heartbeats ago, or about 4 years, I was elected bishop of the Oregon Synod. I was not expecting it. And so I did a lot of pondering in my heart, like Mother Mary, that summer between my election, not my election, your election, and when I began in August. And I realized that my why had nothing to do with numbers, revenue, or more baptisms, more butts in the pew, as they say. It had everything to do with Queen Esther and Jesus' life and the invitation to find our voice and enter into a space where we can help others do too, so that we can all come to the point where we say, perhaps I was born for such a time as this. And I had no idea that a lockdown and a pandemic were coming, right? So be careful what you pray for. But my audacious, deepest why was, what if Lutherans in Oregon become known for more than Jell-O? What are we known for? A Mighty Fortress, Rick Steves maybe? What are our claims to fame? What if we became known for nothing but courageous love? In response to gratitude, in response to all we've been given, in response to this life of abundance. God's gift of grace can feed us for a journey longer than we know or imagine, and most of our journeys are. If you're a parent, think back to when you said yes to that journey, and if you knew then what you know now. Synod, literally synodos in Greek, means walking together. Syn means together, and odos is the way, the path. If you drive on the freeway in Greece, or the part of Cyprus I was able to be 4 years ago, every exit is ex odos, the way out. Felt incredibly biblical to me. And it was a reminder that as Synod, our work is not about me. It's not about these two. It is about all of us walking together. And a kind of walk that doesn't require others to change. What if we listened deeply to those around us? And you are doing an amazing job of this, so don't hear this as a lecture from the bishop. But could we let go of this need to try to have everything and gift it to others, so that our egos are fed, and admit that Christ is already out there? Let's try to find what he's up to together. So as we walk together, we might not need to sing, hold an evening prayer, and invite others to love what we love. But listen to the heartbeat and the tune and the rhythm that feeds their soul as well. When I was new to ministry, I had an idea that I had to have all the wisdom, that I had to know all the things, that I had to carry all of the heartbeat of the congregation. I thought that there was a book of answers and a map of Jesus' way, and I needed to know it, and I knew that I did not. And then I had a dream. I had a dream 6 months into the ministry with Lutherans and Catholics that a tree had fallen down the center aisle of the sanctuary in the middle of the night, and it went crack. Actually, it went crack. And it woke me up because in my dream, I lived in a parsonage, which I've never done. And I looked out through the darkness, and I could tell something really bad had happened. The roof to the sanctuary was collapsed. And in my pajamas, I could feel my body tensing and the sweat on my palms coming up. And I turned to my husband and I said, and he said, well, you might want to get dressed and go over there and see. And so I rubbed the sleep out of my eyes, got dressed, and in my dream, in an instant, I was there. And already there were Oscar and Mary Olson, and she was making coffee in the fellowship hall. And Bert and Kathy Parcher, and he was revving up his chainsaw, preparing to take that stump, that log, and cut it into rounds. He had all the oil and all the gas that he needed because he was ready. And it's so clear to me what that dream was trying to say. Laurie, 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 you don't need to know everything. They know the way. Pay attention to them. As I reflect on that dream, I felt so much calmer about my ministry after that. Anybody ever have a dream like that where so much wisdom bubbled up? There's at least one yes. Thank you. Yes. Sometimes our deepest mind, our most ancient heart knows a lot more than we do. And I think it meant to teach me a few things. First, Bert and Kathy and Oscar and Mary, you don't know them exactly, but you know them, don't you? Right. Almost every church has an Oscar and a Mary and a Bert and a Kathy who know how to show up. And the first thing that they taught me is that you show up for one another and you bring the gifts and the skills that you have. Bert never pretended to be an IT guy. Bert grew up on a farm, and he knew how to fix the furnace when it went down. He knew when the roof needed re-tarring, and he knew how to work a chainsaw. Mary knew how to make coffee, and she knew how to be present, and she knew how to share. And these weren't the most amazing and tremendously remunerated skills, but when we need one another, they mean everything. We show up for one another, and we need one another to walk the way. No one person carries the map or bears the divine. We find the divine together. Secondly, they knew that faith is often sparked and deepened when we cross boundaries, when we're willing to be de-centered, made uncomfortable, cross a line, and risk for the sake of love. Give up doing everything our way, singing our hymns, and praying our way. In this ecumenical congregation, Oscar and Mary and Bert and Kathy could have, in very different ways, told you how worshiping with the Catholics deepened their Lutheran faith. And they didn't need to study Lutheran confessions or exegesis in a seminary or go to graduate school to study systems theory to know that they needed to be stretched. They needed to cross lines that the world sets for the sake of love, and that their faith life was deepened because of it. I did not understand this at first. Every final Sunday in that congregation, each last Sunday of the month, is a lay-led service. They would say, "Pastor, you can come, but remember you're not in charge of it." You can tell they had a little history with some pastors in charge. And so I learned to wait and watch and listen. And one of the most shocking things early in my ministry was that Reformation Sunday sometimes would come and go with nary a nod. That's not shocking you as much as I thought. It shocked me totally. Sometimes somebody would remember. And one year, I'll never forget, a Catholic laywoman preached about Martin Luther and how she was told he was a heretic who should never be listened to when she grew up in Spokane as a Catholic. And then through the hands and feet and hearts of all these Lutherans, she realized that his words liberated her, gave her the freedom to taste grace and to give thanks for what is, and even to call herself beloved. And I don't think there is ever a Reformation sermon I've heard that I remember more. So when we walk the way, we need one another, we show up with what we have and we share abundantly, even if it's in the middle of the night, and even if we think what we bring is very small. And we cross lines that the world sets for the sake of love. Jesus did that. Read the parables over and over and over again. Finally, third thing, these quiet teachers of mine knew that the gift of lamp oil for light and bread for the journey that met them every Sunday at Christ's table comes from the Holy One, the majestic mystery, and does not come from us. They knew that they received this grace in clay jars, earthen vessels, one of my favorite verses from 2 Corinthians. We hold a tremendous power, a treasure, but it does not come from us. And our jars, they're really imperfect. And they're really full of needs that we have one for another. So Bert and Kathy knew they didn't have to be perfect. They knew they did not need to be everything for everyone or Boy Scout prepared for every single eventuality. They simply needed to be awake, attentive, present in the moment to greet the living Christ in the bread and the wine and wherever else Christ meets us. Martin Luther says that a theology of glory makes us think we have to be perfect, makes us think that Christ will be predictable in the shiny and the gold, or that Jesus lives in the middle of the sanctuary or in the silver of the chalice. And Martin Luther says a theology of the cross reminds us that we meet Christ precisely where we least expect, in the suffering of our neighbors, in our own vulnerable places, in those honest moments where we're sitting with a sister we haven't talked to in 10 years and she's confiding something real, or someone we haven't met or known for long shares something tremendous and it gives us hope. Or holding an infant in the wee hours of the night when we are so exhausted we don't think we can go on. Hope in the world. Hope can be born out of despair, connection out of isolation. The trick is paying attention and remembering we're not in control. For me, at least, it's about slowing down enough to pay attention. I don't love this because it can be used to shame people. Why didn't you have enough oil? And then why are they locked out of the party just because they're disorganized? On the Myers-Briggs, I'm a J. I like it when people are organized. And I don't like to think that I would lock anyone out, though my younger sister might tell a different story. And I really don't like to think that Jesus would. I think the important thing, the gift in this text, is the reminder to stay awake, to pay attention, to bring ourselves. And the Matthean community, under oppression from the Jewish community, slipped that little negativity in, which happens all over Scripture. There's grace in the notion that we are invited to pay attention. It's the grace to slow down. It's the grace to say yes to savoring when our child or our neighbor tells us something real. It's the grace to appreciate that you have two of the finest pastors in the Oregon Synod, and you don't have them for very much longer. How can we savor the gift that they have been to this community, to this neighborhood, to this city. It requires paying attention. First Immanuelians. That's supposed to be funny. Giving transforms us. It makes releasers out of clenchers. It makes generous hearts out of fearful addicts. It makes us stronger and taller and more aware of who we are and who we aren't. And as this incredible congregation prepares for this transition season, the truth is your hearts and minds and time and pocketbooks will be called upon. Bert and Kathy and Oscar and Mary are inviting you. They sat in the front row. I remember when we had a capital campaign and a consultant said something I'll never forget. He said, "I have good news and bad news for you, Spirit of Grace. The good news is you need $500,000 for a new entryway and bathrooms that aren't truck stop bathrooms. You need that. And the bad news is, no, the good news is you have it. You have it. The bad news is it's in your pockets and not in the collection plate yet." So, first Immanuelians, you have more than everything you need for this pathway ahead. You are not in control. There will be surprises. You will be called upon to share, to bring your gifts, to be bold for the sake of love, to drop things perhaps that you have loved for 70 years for the sake of loving someone else. You will be transformed. And Jesus, at this table and in your lives, will feed you for the journey. I invite you to look around, look at each other. And those of you online, look at yourself, your hand. You're not looking around enough. I'm not going to stop. Look at each other. Look at these other earthen vessels. They are glorious cracked pots. And they are the ones you start the journey with. You are not alone, but you have been blessed by tremendous pastors. You have an amazing bishop. That's good. That got a laugh. And the world is changing, but it is always changing. That's one of the gifts of reading Scripture. They were always facing a changing time and kind of didn't know what to do. But as you walk together in courage and love, you will find your heartbeat. It might sink even more. You will discover things ancient, things new. And the words of this scripture and the words of your bishop are simply pay attention, stay awake, share what you have, bring your amazing gifts, and let Christ feed you for the journey, because the treasure that you have in these earthen vessels comes from our Creator and does not come from us.